Yeah? Fantastic. I want to thank everybody for coming to this introduction to Greek class. So real quick, what I just want to cover. I already pressed it. Whatever. So real quick, what I want to just start off with is I am going to record this with video and audio. That way, if you miss a class or if someone else who's not here wants to do it, you can actually go back over it and watch it again if you'd like. I'll put it up on my YouTube channel and I'll link it in my Facebook and all this other stuff. So if you want to see it again and you want to watch me talk again, by all means, watch it. So we're going to have, it's going to be 6 weeks of just really basic Greek. It's not going to be a lot. Sadly, you're not going to learn Greek in 6 weeks. No one can learn Greek in 6 weeks. This is just getting your feet wet to help you utilize study tools better. And if you do decide to learn Greek in the future, it will make it a lot easier. So before I get into my introduction, I want to do kind of a personal one and why I learned Greek and what brought me to it. So in 2013, I moved up here to Oregon and started studying theology and maths for long hours of the day. And one of the reasons why is because I was deceived in my own mind and by others. And so what I did was I started studying a lot of theology and different theories about various topics. And through this study, I find these different people talking about these various doctrines and Greek words and yada, yada, yada. And their arguments are really great, and I had no idea what to do with it. But then if anyone's done any study in the topic of theology or Greek or anything, you start to find other people commenting and rebutting. And so I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to teach myself Greek. That way I can't get, the wool can't get pulled over my eyes. That's what I wanted to do. So I pulled open Blue Letter Bible, and I read English and I read Greek, and I read words and I just put them back and forth. I made a printout of Greek letters. I learned how to sound them out. I did the same thing with Hebrew, and reading an interlinear Bible and all this stuff. That wasn't working very well. It gave me a lot of knowledge about what words were this or anything, but it didn't really. I couldn't learn it. I didn't know English very well. So what I did was I bought a grammar book. This one right here. And I started teaching myself Greek through the grammar book. I got about 7 lessons in, and then I got a job, and I stopped. And about a year and a half later, I paid for a tutor who actually goes through this grammar book, and now I've finished 2nd year Greek. And the main reason I really wanted to delve into it with a tutor to do it properly was because my long-term goal is to write a very big thing, and I need to know Greek. Because I need to know the Bible well. And the best way to know the Bible well is actually to know it in its original language, because you don't have to rely on commentators and a third party. It's a benefit. It's not a necessity, unless you want to do something like I do. But that's why I wanted to learn Greek. I didn't want to get deceived, and then through the course of that, I want to just study the Bible more. And one of my greatest things is when I started learning Greek is finally reading John 1, the chapter, and reading it in Greek. And I remember distinctly sitting there with the textbook open going, I know what it says. And then I went outside and I cried. So it was really great for me. I don't expect the same thing from everybody, but it was great for me. So with that said, I've got a nice introduction planned out here. So I was trying to think of a couple reasons why other people would want to learn Greek. Not everyone has my reasons, but everyone might have their own. So I've got there on your handout, I give you 4 reasons why I think it's good to learn Greek. So if you're a history buff, like me, I really love history and old stuff. My first reason there is because it's ancient, or on your handout it says it's extremely old. So Greek's been around since about 2000 BC, and it's been used in some form or variation ever since then. It's gone through a lot of different changes throughout that time, and the first time we see it written is in the 13th century, just like you see on that handout, that first big time we see it written, and it's called Mycenaean Greek, and it was actually not like what you see up here. It's actually more in a hieroglyphic form. At that time, it was either a cuneiform tablet where you chisel in little shapes, or you'd make little pictures. And around not too long after that, about the 8th century, it was in a really weird style that actually comes from a Greek word that means the ox turns. It's actually fascinating. They would write it and they'd go from left to right. Let's see, you guys. So left to right, and they'd go this way, and they'd come down, and they'd come back, and they go down, and they come back, and they go down, and they come back. So it's really weird to see, but it's still in that weird hand style. So in about the 9th and 11th century, after kind of a relative dormant period, so it comes back to what we would, in a lot of different dialects. So think about America, and that we have one language. But when you go all throughout America, you have a lot of different ways people say things. Some people don't use any words that another group will say. If you know the Midwest and the West Coast, the South, the word for soda, or soda pop, or Coke, is kind of that same realm. And about the 5th and 6th centuries is what you came to be known, what scholars call classical Greek. If you were to go to college, this is what they probably teach you, classical Greek. If you wanted to read Homer, the Odyssey, Herodotus, you'd learn classical Greek. And around that time when Alexander the Great decided to take over the world, he brought forth what we now call Koine Greek, which was from the 4th century BC to the 4th century AD. And that's about what we're going to be focusing on. That's what the Bible was written in. And till about the 4th century AD, till about the 14th century, we have what's called Byzantine Greek, because of the Byzantine Empire and so forth. It's not too much different, but there's still some changes. Throughout all these, there's a little bit of change each time. And from the 14th century up till about 1973, you have what's called modern Greek. In 1973, the biggest changes happened, and that's what they speak in Greece today. It's called Standard Modern Greek. They're not very original. So that's kind of the history of it. If that does not enthuse you, rest assured there's another point. The second one is that it helps us learn our own language. Surprisingly enough, if anyone's here has ever taken another language, has anyone ever taken another language before? Anyone? No? Yeah, fantastic. Then you know if the language you're learning will actually help you know your language better. Surprisingly enough, that's how it works. So on your handout, I have a couple little points there to make. I can't explain how many words in English and other languages as well actually come from Greek. They're either Greek loanwords or they're derivatives. All you got to do is go open up a medical textbook, a philosophy book, and you see this just everywhere. So I got a few words there on your handout that kind of point this out. So the word prophet is almost literally the same, the meaning and everything. Philosophy. Jesus. The English Jesus actually comes from the Greek. Some minor changes, but that's where it comes from. The word name comes from the Greek. The word trek actually means run in Greek, but if you've ever used that word, I'm going to go on a long trek. And then eclectic, which, as a side note, is my favorite word in all of English, comes from the Greek. It means choice. It means choose, if you were using a verbal form. You also see this, and I know we have some medical professionals in here. What is it? Oh no, I totally forgot it. The word for blood and the study of blood. Hematology? Yeah, there we go. So the other kind of thing that the big thing that it helps do is Greek's what's called an inflected language, where English is an analytical language. What that means is, with English, you'd have a sentence. Where's my pen? We'll do blue. You have a sentence, and to know how words are functioning in the sentence, it'll be word order, which is what's going to tell you. So it'll go subject, verb, object. And that's how you're going to know. It's almost always the same. Yoda does not speak good English. I'm sorry. But what Greek is, and a lot of other languages do this as well, it's an inflected language, which means you can go, and on your handout I have two examples, but you can go subject, verb, object, You can go verb, subject, object, object, subject, verb, subject, so forth, and so on. Because what it is appended to the end of a Greek word is actually what tells you how it's functioning in the sentence. Just knowing the word doesn't do anything. You need to know the end of the word. That is what's going to tell you how it's functioning, whether it's a subject or an object or even a verb. And so with that, Greek's one of those languages that you really have to pay attention to the word. Where English, I have a friend, one of the sisters at church is an amazing speed reader. And English is one of those languages that really gravitates towards speed reading because it's just word order. You just fly through and you can really focus clearly in that way. Greek doesn't really function that way. You really have to pay attention to the end of words, to these little itty-bitty marks, because they mean a lot when it comes to what the word means. It doesn't mean it's difficult. It just means you have to pay attention, which for me, who is distracted very easily, is a very good thing. So my third point is the main reason I did is there's less susceptibility to having the wool pulled over your eyes, or it'll make you more confident in interactions with those who are more quote unquote knowledgeable than you or hostile to you. So how many times have you conversed with somebody and they've said, I know whatever, and you don't? As if to say, since you don't know it, you have no idea what you're talking about. It's happened to me numerous times. Fill in the word Greek there, and it can happen in any scholarly theological debate all day. If you were to have a Jehovah's Witness come to your door, and they actually came in, they're actually not allowed to come in, sort of. And they came in, what they'd probably have is they'd have a writ, memorized spiel about John 1:1 and why the deity of Christ is not there. And you're going to sit there for hours trying to defend it, and they're going to have a spiel that they've been taught what to say. And on your handout there, I actually have John 1:1 in Greek, and I actually have it also in English, and the English version there is the Net Bible, and they do a really fun thing there at the end, which I thought was pretty significant for what a Jehovah's Witness would do. If you pulled the Net Bible out for a Jehovah's Witness to read, they'd tell you that the last phrase that it says, fully God, is wrong. They would say it should be a God, because the Greek article, or what they would probably say is the definite article, is not used there. And it's very true. In the Greek there, you have anarchi in ologos, ke ologos in pros ton, theon, ke theos in ologos. And what they're going to try and argue is that since the definite article is not there, it doesn't mean it's not the God, it just means a God. Because in English, that's what that kind of means. When you have put a definite article, it means it's sure, it's certain, it's a specific entity. If we put an indefinite, it just means just generic. It's no big deal. But that's not how the Greek article works. And all you need is a cursory understanding of Greek to be able to look at a Jehovah's Witness in the eyes and go, you have no idea what you're talking about. X, Y, Z, and you explain it. So the other group is this person named Bart Ehrman and his ilk. Small question. Does anyone know who Bart Ehrman is besides Kofi? Anyone?
Yeah. Dictionary, doesn't it? Ehrman's dictionary.
No, not quite. So Bart Ehrman, there's a really famous Christian man by the name of Bruce Metzger, who's gone on to glory, who is a very well-known New Testament textual critic. So if you ever read or hear of the textual apparatus known as Nestle Aland 28th edition or 27th, so forth, he's one of the main editors of it. And Bart Ehrman was either his last or one of his last doctoral students. And Bart Ehrman is an apostate who has written loads of books contending that Jesus wasn't God, this is how he became God, the New Testament writers are all just making stuff up, just go to town. And if you were to have a conversation with Bart Ehrman, he knows Greek really well. I think his doctoral thesis was on, this is irrelevant, on the Byzantine text type in the New Testament, or first century Greece or something like that. So On the other side of that, there's one of Bart Ehrman's doctoral students is a man by the name of Michael Kruger. Does anyone know who Michael Kruger is? Thank you, Kofi. Michael Kruger is a defender of the canon of Scripture and the authority, the inspiration, and so forth. So he's in the same camp. He knows Greek and he responds to it. You can read Michael Kruger's books. I highly encourage it. And it'll really help you out. If you knew Greek, it'd help you even more to put you on that level. Because then you can have a one-to-one conversation with these kinds of people and nothing will go over your head and you'll be able to understand it a lot more. Rather than just going over to somebody else and trusting their judgment. You can use your own. It's not that difficult. That was reason 3. So reason 3. Reason 4, and it's the most important one to learn Greek. It's why I hope you're here. And it is that it helps us read and study our Bible. And not only does it help us do it, it actually does it more better. I love that phrase. Thank you, Cameron. So, did you know that besides English, the entire Bible came in one language? And I'm going to leave it. Jesus read the Bible in Greek. Contrary to some popular opinion, there's good defenses that he actually read Greek, spoke Greek, but he did read it in Greek. Paul read it all in Greek. Paul wrote it in Greek, wrote in Greek. And until Latin took over, Greek was the predominant language and the only one that you could read the entire corpus of the Bible in. So you can actually read the Old Testament in Greek, which is one of the reasons Greek is the first thing you learn at when you go to a Bible college or seminary. So I'm not going to get into at this juncture the whole Septuagint stuff. Leave that aside for another time. Just know that by learning Greek, that a whole other world of Bible study gets opened up to you. Believe me, it is glorious, I must say. So there's 4 things I want you to remember before we really get into the lesson itself. I want you to get excited. This is an exciting topic. It's not boring, I promise. Have fun, because it is a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun writing this stuff on the board. Karen can attest to that. And don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. And finally, ask questions. Please, ask questions. I love answering them, and if I can't answer it, I love finding the answer. Trust me, questions are always warranted. So before we get into lesson 1, that is what I've entitled The Basics, are there any questions? Any at all? Anyone? Bueller? I really just wanted time to take a sip of coffee.
Other 2 people coming for sure, you know.
Well, they missed out on my awesome introduction. It's a good thing I'm recording it. So let's get into lesson 1, the basics. So, one just doesn't open up an interlinear Bible and learn a language. Trust me, as I said before, I tried really badly. To learn a language, you have to start at the very beginning with any language. And that's what we're going to do, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. I am, Kofi is, Cameron is, and I know Ron is. So everyone else should too.
Amen.
So in 6 weeks, our goal is to be able to look at John 1, 1 through 5. You have it there on the second page. On the second page. And to understand the majority of it without looking at an English text. That's our goal. And it is doable, I promise you. Another goal is to have a rudimentary knowledge of Greek. So if you do decide to go further, as I said, it's going to be a little bit easier. I want you to think of it as walking into a very, very big, deep pool that has a shallow end that's like this deep. And we're just slowly wading in, and we're never going to get above our knees. Think about it like that. Because what's comforting it's comforting and tolerable to someone who gets overwhelmed easily. I don't know if anyone here gets overwhelmed easily. Raise your hand on your head if you do. Let me know, and we'll slow down a little bit more. So we're going to look at 4 things today that are in every single language, and without them, it's impossible to make heads or tails out of anything. So the first thing we're going to look at is the alphabet. Someone's walking in the door.
Am I late?
You're just in time for the actual lesson.
This started at
6:30.
6:30. Okay.
Perfectly all right. I am going to have this recorded and put up on YouTube. So if you want to catch the first 20 minutes of what I said, you're just fine. So there's 3 pages there for a handout. One is a vocabulary list that is optional to learn later. And the other is a pronunciation sheet. And the other is the lesson guide that we're going through
I'm
today.
sorry.
That's fine. You're one of my eldest wives. You can do no wrong. So the alphabet. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run through the alphabet. I'm going to say each letter and hopefully pronounce it the way I want you guys to pronounce letters correctly. I mean, me correctly, not necessarily you. And I'm just going to go through them, and then we're going to sound them out together as a group. Is everyone okay with that? Awesome. Great. I saw 3 head nods. It's more than enough for me. This is a dictatorship, not a democracy. So we're going to go through the letters. So up here on the top, we have what we call lowercase, and in Greek, what we call it minuscule. Don't worry about that. The bottom, we have what we would call uppercase, and what Greek would call majuscule. Don't worry about that. So we're going to focus on the bottom one for now. So from left to right, we have alpha, beta, gamma, delta. I learned a different pronunciation system. Hang on. Epsilon. Yeah. Zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu. How do they do it? How do they do it? Good enough for me. Xi, or Xi, Omicron, Pi or Pi, Rho, Sigma. These are 2 different sigmas. Hold off on that for a moment. Tau, Upsilon, Phi or Phi, Chi or Chi, Psi or Psi, and Omega. So we'll get into that a little more with the pronunciation, but for now, we're just going to stick with 1. So I'm going to pronounce it, and then I want you guys to pronounce it with me, and then say it and pronounce it. All right? So the word sounds, how you make the sound of the word is the first section of the word itself, which is why I had said phi or phi, faux fum. It doesn't really matter. The f is how you pronounce the word. The f. I'm not worried about the last half. That's for the picky people. So this is alpha, So everybody, alpha, Wonderful. So the next is beta, beta, beta. Oh, you're doing marvelous. Next one, gamma. Oh, it's music to my ears. Then we have delta. So delta. So one more.
Delta.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Then we have epsilon. Epsilon.
Epsilon.
Zeta.
Zeta.
This is dangerous. Eta.
Eta.
Theta.
Theta.
Iota. Probably E. Iota.
Iota.
The rest of it. Kappa.
Kappa.
Lambda.
Lambda.
Mu.
Moo. M. Moo.
N. Nu. N.
N. Nu. N.
X. Xi. X.
Xi. X.
Try that one more time. X.
X.
X. Think X with an S on it. X. O. Omicron.
Omicron.
Pi. P. Pi. P.
Pi. Pi.
Ra. Ro. Ra.
Ro.
I want to hear that one more time because I was waiting for this one the whole night.
Ro.
That's good. S. Sigma. S.
Sigma.
T. Tau. T.
Tau.
U. Upsilon. U.
Upsilon.
Phi. F.
Phi.
Chi. Ch.
Chi.
Now apologize to your neighbor for spitting on it. Ps. Psi. Ps.
Psi.
And not a W. O. Omega. O.
O. Omega. O.
Let's try that one more time. Not a W. O. Omega. O.
Not a W. O. Omega. O.
Beautiful. Okay, so now I just want to run through them one more time and kind of explain some stuff and kind of how to write it. So on the second part, underneath all the letters, so I have them on a printout there for you to look at. If you were looking at those following along, that's fantastic. So on the bottom there is kind of a general idea of how to write them. You don't have to do it exactly. Remember, your own handwriting is your own handwriting. I will assign homework that is optional. You do not have to do it. But if you do want to do it, and I encourage you to do so, the bottom one is what you'd use as a guide to write out the letters. It doesn't have to look like mine, but please make your Greek neater than your English. I purposely wrote my English very legible. My Greek always looks like that. So I'm just going to run through the letters and just point out some really main things you want to remember when writing them and recognizing them. So the alpha looks much like our A. In fact, the capital is basically our A. Same with the beta. It looks the same. Don't get the capital and the lower case confused. This little dip below is actually part of how you write the letter and distinguish them. So this is important, that it dips below a line. The gamma looks like our Y. It is not. But it does, in other pronunciation systems, it actually has a y sound and a g sound, which is the one that I teach my students who actually learn Greek as a full thing. But for now, it's just a g. So it's not a Y, it's g, and you want to remember to have it lower. Delta sounds like our D. It looks like our D. Epsilon looks like our E. Sounds like our E, but only one sound. It only makes one sound, E. Zeta, or zeta, this is actually above the line, and this is below the line. The capital looks just like our Z, and if you squinted really hard, maybe the lowercase would. Depends on how you squint. The eta has this is below the line as well, and this is kind of why you have this for our English brethren and capital H, because it has the second half of that sound. This is why the H looks the way it does, and it makes that second sound, A. So eta. This is a theta. They look very similar, capital and lowercase. Not too hard to get distracted. Iota, again, it's not Yoda. It's not iota, it's iota. Greek teachers get kind of angry at that one. Kappa looks like our K. The lambda, you want to remember that this goes right to the tip when writing it. Right to the tip. And it kind of looks like an L. In my head, I never forget that's a lambda. For some reason, it looks like an L to me. I don't know why. These are two of the bigger ones to remember. This looks like a U, and this looks like a V. The capitals are an M and an N. So they make that sound. This one and this one get confused a lot in my head, so I have to stare at them for a good half a second, even though I know how to read Greek. But this makes an M sound, and this makes an N sound. Xi is my least favorite letter, but I have to go over it. This goes under it, and this is over it. So there's two letters that have an O sound to them. One is Omicron, and one is Omega. As a pretty cool reminder, the first half of the word actually gives you the letter, gives you the sound, and the second half tells you it means small. So this means small O, if you will, small O sound. This means big O sound. Omicron, micron, small. Omega, big. So there you go. That's always fun. Anyone who's looked at math for any amount of time knows this is a pi. Everyone? I imagine most everyone here knows that, right? Yeah? Awesome. Then this one is a rho. And as a small side note, this little sign here, which is a rough breathing mark, actually is always on this letter when it's at the beginning of a word, because it has that sound to it. Rho. It does trill. So for you who can't trill, my deepest sympathies that you cannot trill your R's. Don't worry about it. Ra is fine. And so this is the coolest one. So the Greek alphabet has 22 letters, but in lowercase, one of them actually has two different forms. So a medial sigma, you'll find this. It's not an omicron. It has a little hat. I don't know if anyone can see the hat. It has a hat. It's super hip and cool. It's a sideways hat. Not a backwards cap. This is not a profile shot. This is a head-on shot. This is when you find it in the middle of a word. You're going to find Cameron. You're going to find it like this. This is a medial sigma. When it's at the end of a word, you'll find it like this. So it's really interesting when you look at old Greek texts that didn't have any punctuation marks or spaces. You'll see this and you'll know it's in the middle of a word, and you'll see this and you'll know the word just ended, which is actually really great for textual critics and whatnot. But you want to distinguish those two. They both make the same sound in every circumstance with this pronunciation system. Then you have the tau. Looks just like our T, capital and lowercase. This is not a U, but with this pronunciation system, it actually has this U sound. So upsilon. The capital is the one that's going to freak some people out because it looks like a Y. I have no advice for you. Phi. Sorry. Phi, this is just a handwriting form for it. If you look on your handout, right there, fourth from the right, you'll see kind of what it looks like more of in a print form. And then it actually gives you two different options on how to write it as a lowercase. It's just going to be how it's comfortable for you and how you can recognize it. That's really what it comes down to, that you know what the letter is and that it's somewhat close to what everyone else does. Then we have the chi. If you've taken German at all, or you know who Nessie is, then you'll know how to say this letter. Nessie lives in the Loch Ness, and German has ch, correct? Yeah, thank you. And it's an X. It's an X. You know, almost forgot. This is below. 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 This is a psi. Yes, psi. Think trident. I don't know how else to go around it. Poseidon. Poseidon has a trident, so that's why it has that. And it makes that PS sound, psa. And then the omega. There we go. So in Scripture, when in a lot of cases when it says it's written, I am the first and the last, I am the Alpha and the Omega, beginning to end. So there you go. Any questions on alphabet at this point in time before we move on to a little bit of extra stuff in here? Anyone? No? Anyone? Any questions at all? Marvelous. So these are the vowels in Greek. And I'm going to do something that this grammar actually does. So here's English vowels, and here's Greek vowels. So there are 6 Greek vowels, and I've written here 6 English vowels. Because Y functions as a vowel oftentimes. Think of the word Egypt. And so it's a really good reminder of how to remember which Greek vowels. Alpha, epsilon, eta, iota, omicron, upsilon. A-E-I-O-U-Y. I can't say that one fast. So this is your list of Greek vowels. I didn't write it on there. This isn't necessarily too significant. You can write it as a side note if you'd like. But your handout of, your second handout with the diphthongs kind of gives it to you as well, which is what these are. Man, I've knocked that one off so many times. So English also has diphthongs. O is a diphthong, E-I, A-I, so forth and so on. And what it is you put 2 vowels together and they change the sound into one uniform sound. What we're learning, kind of forgot to mention this, what we're learning is actually what's called Erasmian pronunciation. It was developed in the 14th and 15th century by a person named Desiderius Erasmus. This is not how they spoke it in the 1st century at all. End of story. But if you're going to read or hear any scholarly stuff or go to most seminaries or anyone's going to teach you Greek, this is the system they're going to teach you. This is why I've chosen to use it here, because it's familiar territory if you're ever to go to any YouTube video saying, oh, the Greek letters, pronounce them out for me. They'll probably use this one. So it's kind of it's convenient. And so you have there on your handout the diphthongs as well. And the sounds they make are I as in isle, alpha, iota. Then you have epsilon, iota is A. So I, A. It kind of sounds like our English diphthongs, which is pretty convenient if you ask me. And oi. Anyone listen to punk rock when they were younger? Anyone? Anyone? No? Anyone? No? Punk rock? Okay. Oi. Oi. Oo. And this one makes, which one do they have this one? I forgot. U. This is a U, and this has the same sound as does anyone like sauerkraut? Anyone? Sauerkraut? Okay, it makes that sound. Ow. Sauerkraut. And then I forgot one. Does anyone know the French word for yes?
Oui.
Yeah, that's a oui. That's oui. So those are the diphthongs. So, any questions before we go on to the next portion of our lesson? Cameron.
What is a diphthong?
What is it?
What is it used as?
A diphthong, I just mentioned it before. A diphthong is when you have 2 vowels and put together. When you have, so if you were to pronounce both of these separately, you go O-E. So what it is, it's called something that's called euphony, which actually comes from the Greek, meaning good sounding or good sound. So euphony. So what they do is they change the sound to make it more amenable or pleasant or easier. And this happens in Greek all the time. It's as if whoever decided to invent Greek as a language said, that sounds dumb, we should change it. Let's do that. And they did it. So that's why they have these different sounds. It's kind of sandwiching together and grabbing different parts of each sound. Thank you for the question, Cameron. Anyone else? Any more questions before we get on to, what do I have next? Pronunciations. We kind of did that already. So follow that Don't follow that modern pronunciation in your own personal study for this. Just follow the one that just says pronunciation. It'll be just fine. Not too big of a deal. Cameron, you have a quizzitive look on your face.
You have is it eta and epsilon or upsilon in this? I don't see that on my handout.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Which one?
The eta epsilon.
That's right. It's because it's that one.
It's one.
Thank you, Cameron.
You're welcome.
I did the wrong one on the board. Don't worry about it. No test for you this Saturday because we don't have class this Saturday. So the next thing I want to cover is these accent marks. So these used to mean something. In modern Greek, then none of them are used. As a small note, the only one in modern Greek that's used is the acute, and that's it. So in Koine Greek, what it was is it kind of sounded somewhat like a singing language. So you would raise and lower the pitch of how you'd say a word, and it actually meant something a lot different. Quite comical. And so the grave accent, it's not grave. Actually, I think it might be grave. Doesn't matter. So the grave accent mark, what it is it would go like a lower down pitch. The acute would be a rising pitch, and the circumflex would be flat. For our purposes, if you see it in a word, you would just emphasize the syllable, and that's it. They're just, you want to pay attention to them because they will actually change the meaning of a certain word. It'll be spelled the same, but it'll have one of these accents, and it'll change the meaning of the word. So a good example is the article the. If you change the accent and the breathing mark to it, it's spelt the same, but you have these little things over it, and it actually means who or whom. It's kind of a big deal for these little tiny words. So we'll get to that at another time at the moment. Just store it away in the memory bank, and it'll come up. So then we have these smooth and rough breathing marks. So these are accent marks, and these are breathing marks. So the smooth breathing mark makes no difference in sound. It just looks cool. That's about it. The rough breathing mark makes, with the Erasmian pronunciation, it makes a h sound. This is where actually you get your h sound. And it only shows up on vowels and the rho. So this would make your a, your alpha sound, say ha, ha. Your o sound would say ho, and so forth and so on. Find he, just to lighten the mood. And I put on the side there the iota subscript. It's one of those small little marks. It doesn't make any difference in sound. It actually just it marks what type of speech it may be, or that an iota is actually the last letter in the word. But that's for another time. I don't want to put that on you just now. Just know when you see it that it doesn't make a sound different. So the last point I wanted to do here was punctuation, but I want to know if there's any questions about accent marks. Any fun questions before we do punctuation? Anybody? Okay. Tracy?
So the accent marks are the top three?
The accent marks are the top three. And breathing marks are these two. This is just in detention for now.
And the accent mark going one way or the other way, that can change the meaning of a word?
It can change the meaning of a word. It depends. For the most part, it has to do more with finding it or citing a source. So if you use what's called a lexicon or a Greek dictionary, it'll be, and it's by itself, it'll have an acute accent. And if you find it in a sentence somewhere, it may have a grave accent. And so if you're going to cite it by itself, you need like the acute. That's mostly what they do. It's kind of why this is what happened in 1973 in Greece. Is they just kind of got rid of them all because they're like, well, they're not really that important for our purposes. So let's just get rid of them. But when you read the New Testament, they're all over it, and they do make small adjustments and changes. You don't need to worry about that. For our purposes, just know they're there, and try to remember them. So if you go further, there'll be a little bit more significance to it. But for now, just have it as this trivia for yourself.
Can you make this? Is it circumflex?
Circumflex. I did not plan my board better.
A little bigger for those of us
Yeah?
who are
Sure, I can do that.
sighted.
How about this? How do we go? I do it all over.
Thank you. Because I see it on the paper, it looks like there's a dot under the curve.
So you go accent marks.
2 slants. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And we'll just do this.
Curve. Is there a dot under that?
No.
Curve.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And that's circumflex?
Those are accent marks.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Is that better?
Yes,
Good.
I'll sit up front next time. With you.
Okay, there, it's a little better. The Yoda subscript just got expelled. Okay. So the last one I want to do is punctuation. So I have them right here. So for the most part, punctuation functions the same as in English. So the comma and the period all look the same. A comma means the same thing. It's stop. I want to explain something real quick. Okay, let's get right back into it. A period means, okay, I'm done, new thought. Colon, semicolon is actually a raised dot. You want to pay attention to that in the text. It functions the same as our semicolon or colon. We only have one. It's a raised dot. That's what you want to remember. It's not the same as a period. It is a raised dot. And the one that's most weird for everyone, what? Huh?
We're pre-laughing
Oh, okay, good.
at the question mark.
Okay, so the question mark. Actually, I pulled this out of my Greek grammar because I think it's really great. So down there, the question mark looks just like our semicolon, but it is not our semicolon. So the last mark in the list is the hardest to keep straight when you are beginning, but it will make an enormous difference in what you understand a text to say. For example, the statement estin theos, with a period, says there is a God. Or perhaps God is or God exists. It can mean all three of those. But if we change the punctuation to estin theos with a little semicolon, then we have is there a God? Or perhaps does God exist? Kind of a big deal. So that's definitely a big one and you kind of want to pay attention to. So that's the end of lesson 1. Are there any questions about alphabet, pronunciation, accent marks? Yes, Joe.
So in the New Testament or even the Septuagint, are all the times when you have a question mark in the English translation, is that because there's that semicolon question mark? Or?
Not every time. We'll probably get to it when we get to pronouns. I'll probably make a note of it. There's actually certain words that would influence a question mark, but they may actually be present and not have a question because it may be rhetorical. But for the most part, yeah. When that's there, your English, that's why it's there in the English text, is because they put a question mark there. There's actually a few different passages that in the New Testament where they don't know if it's a question or not. And so some English texts will put a question mark and some won't. And you may look at them and go, wait, it's a question here. Why? Because it's really hard and difficult to know what the author's trying to tell you. It ends up meaning around the same thing, but how he's saying it is going to be a little odd. So, any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so I would like to listen to this again. I'm the oldest. It's okay.
It's fine.
Whatever. I go to YouTube. I type in. You guys are gonna laugh, but anyway, I put in YouTube, and then what do I do?
You can just type my name into YouTube.
But I don't know your name.
My name is Daniel Gutfeld.
It's on the board, Daniel.
Let me write it on the board. Thank you, Kofi.
Every teacher always cries.
Kofi
I'm
emailed
Mr.
all his students with all the links and everything that they needed.
Well, a lot of my students didn't email me, but then those students aren't here. So
Thank you, Daniel.
I will send out an email with the link
It's okay.
tonight.
Yeah.
Oh wait, hang on, just make sure that I don't look like I'm Greek here. There we go. Next week I'll write my name in Greek. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So yeah, I'll post it on there.
It's just gonna have this date on it or something, or are you gonna name it something?
It'll probably be Greek Introduction Lesson 1.
Yeah.
Or Koine Greek Introduction Lesson 1. It's going to be the only YouTube video on my channel right now. I deleted all the others because they were bad.
Darn it.
You change your theology and you're like, I really have to like fix my witness. So, are there any other small questions, big questions about, future lessons, what do you want to get out of it, so forth and so on. Okay.
Well, I have one.
Yes, Dennis.
So with pronunciations,
Uh-huh.
is there always just one way to pronounce a letter?
For the most part, with the Erasmian, that's kind of how it's designed. So it's like point and click, see it and say it. With other ones, it's a little different. The one I teach my students is what's more along the lines of what they think the first century sounded like, and it sounds more like the modern. So, for instance, the vowels. So this one, and this one, all of them have the same exact sound, E. The diphthongs, this one, and this one all make the same sound. So, yeah, it's fun.
I like English.
There's a lot of similarities. English comes from Greek. A lot of other languages do. When I was learning Greek, the textbook I go through starts off talking about how English works. Like, how does an English noun work? How does an English verb work? How does an English adjective work? And it goes, okay, so now that I've given you what you've totally forgotten in high school, now we're going to get into Greek. And then all of a sudden you start writing sentences to people and texting, and you go, that's wrong. That's wrong. No! You start remembering English, surprisingly enough. Any other questions before I say what your optional homework is? No? Anyone? Ethan, you look like you have a question.
I do, but I think I just wasn't paying attention.
That's fine.
Explain what circumflex was.
Circumflex is one of these accent marks. Originally, accent marks were for how you would kind of inflect a word or almost even pronounce it, sort of. And originally what it was the grave would be when you see the accent, that part of the word, you in your pronunciation, you go down in tone. The acute you would rise it in tone, and a circumflex, you keep the tone the same.
Is it Chinese similar? Don't
Yeah,
they
a
do
tonal
it
language is what they're
really?
called.
Up and
Mhm.
down. And,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very similar, very similar.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about that. It's just trivia. Even if you went to a college and learned Greek, they'd probably say the same thing and say, don't worry about it though. I'm sorry I mentioned it. Moving on.
Okay.
You get really afraid when you mention something, you go, but don't even worry about it. Like, but you told it to me. It's like, because I have to tell you it, or else you may call me a deceiver and a liar. A great question. It doesn't matter, even if it's something I've already said. Any other questions? Anybody?
Maybe I missed it, but can you sing your ABCs in Greek?
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu. Learning Greek is fun. Psi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. I don't remember the song. Hang on. They have it in here.
It's in the book.
They have it in the book. No, they have it in the book. It goes by Three Little Indians.
Oh, does it?
It does. It uses the tune of Three Little Indians. I was gonna write it up here, and we were all gonna do it, but I decided against it.
Next
So here we go. So alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, and zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda. See how far you've come. Mu and nu and xi and omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, and upsilon, phi and chi and psi, omega. Learning Greek is fun. There you go. Million hits. Time to monetize. Okay. Full credit goes to what is this? Rodney Decker's Household and Baker Academic. Okay, just to get that out of the way. So, if there's no more questions, so again, as I said before, there is homework and it is completely optional. However much you want to put into it is up to you. If you want to learn it and learn it well and prepare yourself maybe for future study, then I would totally suggest learning it. I plan on making homework really easy and just giving you basic things that are going to help you read a concordance and study it and open up a Greek dictionary and study it and not to be deceived. The homework's not to learn Greek, but to be able to study better. That's what the homework's going to be designed for. And so each week I'm going to just do a little bit of details. So for this week, it's going to be the alphabet. I just want you to write the alphabet. Learn to write the alphabet. Write the capital letters, the capital letters, and the lowercase, so majuscule, minuscule. Just write them out. Write them out once. Write them out 30 times. It's up to you. They're not too hard. The hardest one is this jerk, the C. All the rest are pretty easy and a lot of fun to write. I love writing the iota, the theta, and the lambda. I love the lambda. I love it to death. It's so much fun. I don't know why. And the last one is the last page, the only single page handout you have. And what it is a vocabulary list. So every week I'm going to give you 5 Greek words and a definition to them. And what they're either going to be is they're going to be a word that's inside John 1 through 5, or they're going to be a word in the New Testament that is either has really great significance or that shows up all the time. So one of the weeks, one of the words I'm going to give you is the word ability, which actually shows up 210 times in the Bible and is actually one of the 40 most common words in Scripture, at least in the New Testament. So ability, but that's not for now. For now, let me see. Let me get I did not give me one. So the words we have there they're all from John 1 through 5. They're archi, logos, theos, zoe, and anthropos. You may already know these words. I'm not worried about it. You may have never seen these words before. You may look at them and recognize them in some way and say, wait a second, that sounds like another word. And then you may see the definition and it'll click. And a lot of times, Cameron and Kofi can both attest to this. They're 2 guys I'm actually teaching Greek to. We notice this all the time with different words, and it helps you remember them, which is probably one of the most fun things about learning Greek, is seeing a word and going, I already know what that means. That's great. So, yeah, those are going to be fun. You don't need to write them out. That's up to you. Just read them and go over them. The more you look at them, the more you'll see them over and over again. These are all very common words in the Bible, and John loves these words. He loves them to death, actually. Yeah, so.
Can you pronounce them again?
Archi. Well, wait, hang on. I got to pronounce them in Erasmian. Arche, logos, theos, zoe, anthropos or anthropos. I don't have the accents on there because my computer doesn't do accents when you type it in. So I didn't copy and paste them. So
I can show you how.
what? You can? Oh man, you should.
Extra credit.
Just means he gets 2 automatic correct answers on a test I give him. So that's the end of the class. If there's any questions, Cameron, question.
Could you explain why there are 3 entries before the definition?
Yes. Okay. So how it goes there is what it is first you're gonna have the Greek word. After the Greek word, that little what's normally 2 little letters is the genitive ending of the word. We'll get to that later. It's there. Don't worry about it. This is how you would look if you looked up it in a Greek dictionary. Don't worry about that little part. Focus on the word itself. The last letter in that series of underlined things is the article that connects to it. We'll actually go over this next week, what the article is, and what that genitive is. So we'll go over that next week. Just know it's there. And then you're going to have then the definition, followed by an English gloss. And these are really truncated definitions. I took a lot out of the actual lexicon and just gave it really basic. So, yeah. Thank you, Cameron. Any other questions on that note?
It helps that you have that up at the top.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So you're gonna do that again on all the other.
On all of them.
Okay. the
So,
other 4.
yeah. That's always going to be up there, and next week you'll know what you'll know what a genitive is next week when I go over it. So for now, we just want to dip our toe in, just big toe in the water, just an alphabet and knowing how to pronounce the letters, and then you can go and impress all your friends and go, I know the Greek alphabet. I have a friend who does that, but a 5-year-old taught them, surprisingly enough. So. Any more questions before I stop my recording? Fantastic. So I'm gonna stop my recording now.